Welcome back to Streaming Media NYC here in the lovely Intercontinental Barclay. It's funny, I have to travel all this way to New York City to see somebody who lives in the state next to mine. I live in Tennessee. Jan Ozer lives in Virginia. Jan, you've got Streaming Learning Center. Let's talk about that first. What exactly is Streaming Learning Center?
Streaming Learning Center is a blog that I started maybe 12 or 13 years ago to contain a lot of the articles I had read about compression, codecs, and encoding. And it expanded into a course offering maybe 4 or 5 years ago where I offer courses in streaming related topics. So FFmpeg's up there. There are some third-party courses from some instructors like Wowza. There's a course up there, and it just helps technical people coming into the industry get familiar with all the terms and technologies and best practices and tools that they need to use to become conversant and effective in their roles, either on the user side or on the builder side.
Okay.
So those are my two targets.
So from a builder standpoint, obviously quite a bit has changed in the last couple of years. For instance, machine learning, which some people call AI, has become more popular, at least from a buzzword standpoint. What's your take on that? And I know you've done some work around workflows that involve machine learning.
Machine learning has been, it came into everybody's greater consciousness, I want to say, in November of 2022 when ChatGPT came out, and it really just exploded. But if you look at the history of a lot of the companies who've been in the business for a while, like Harmonic or Visioneer, they've been writing about and using machine learning in their codecs for, I think I found an article from Harmonic back in 2016.
Right.
And Visioneer, Zoe Liu has been writing white papers on machine learning and codecs since 2020, 2021. So I think it has been a big part of codec development for a while, primarily in content adaptive technology. So the ability to gauge a technology and estimate what bitrate would be necessary to encode it effectively, and then obviously only use that bitrate, don't go higher.
Well, I was going to say, even in 2015, having worked for a company that was doing context-aware encoding, we were having to do those very things, both to figure out bitrate and also to figure out quality for compression in certain areas. So how has it progressed from that 2016 timeframe to now?
Hard for me to say. I mean, the one thing I discovered is that it's impossible to separate the efficiency delivered by AI from the efficiency delivered by other techniques.
Okay.
So everybody's going to say machine learning or AI or generative in their spec sheets, but you're never going to be able to tell, is it 5%, is it 10%? So what I spoke at a panel on NAB, and I basically told people, just ignore, when you see an encoder with AI, just ignore the AI.
Okay.
If you're evaluating it, evaluate it like you would any other encoder.
Right.
And gauge its overall effectiveness, not what contribution AI has to the overall.
That's good advice. So codecs themselves, so we've got workflows that have machine learning, but the codecs themselves, are we seeing a similar scenario where new codecs will say, look, we've got AI, therefore we're better, or is it strictly AI in the workflow?
I think, short-term, long-term. So the whole thing that stops codec deployment, as you know, is the decode side. And there's a huge preference for hardware decode in mobile. There's a necessity for hardware decode in the living room where all premium content is really targeted. So that's where all the money goes. And so it's very challenging to change traditional codecs in a way that makes them incompatible with those decoders. What's interesting is some of the AI-based codecs, like there's a company called Deep Render, and they're building their codec to be decoded on NPUs, neural programming units, and those have been shipping in edge devices since 2015, 2016. So it's interesting that because those are general purpose devices and you can use them for any machine learning, any type of AI unwinding that you need, that it feels like the move is going to be towards them as opposed to codec-specific silicon. And it may be that VVC or even HEVC could be the last dedicated silicon decode-based codec, and we could be moving towards NPUs. I mean, a big part of the recent Apple announcement with the M4 chip was, a 18 TOPS or 36 TOPS NPU unit on the chip. And that can more than handle decode for any of the new codecs that are coming out that are AI-based.
Well, and it's interesting that tick and talk that Intel used to do with die size, transistors, etc. If you remember back in the day, we didn't have encoding and decoding built into the processor itself. It was all standalone. And the argument back then was go to a much more robust general purpose processor and you can go ahead and do those things. And then we moved to, no, we need to integrate all that stuff in there. And now with the neural stuff, especially with the NPUs, it's like it's almost like the old days where we gave a floating point coprocessor, along with the CPU when you go back to the Pentium days. How that general purpose ability to do floating point dramatically changed not just the computing they were trying to do with Excel or spreadsheets. It allowed us to do things like DCT. So your point's well taken on the fact that NPUs are general purpose enough that you could use them for decoding easily, but you could also use them for the machine learning scenarios and other neural networks. I guess one final question. You and I have written over the years, since probably 2003, about patent pools, and oftentimes what happened with AVC, and even to a certain extent HEVC, is the patent pool sort of kicked the can down the road to get adoption in place. Where do we stand in the patent pool space at this point on the encoding side especially?
We're at a huge inflection point, I think, and that Avanci came out with the Avanci video pool that is charging royalties based on content. So it's not encoder, it's not decoder, it's encoded bit streams. There was a recent case in Germany, Broadcom versus Netflix, where the court found Netflix violated Broadcom's patents because they not encoded, not decoded, but transmitted HEVC encoded bit streams within Germany, which is content, so it's content royalties. There's a suit in California where Nokia is suing Amazon for 264 and 265 bit streams, not where they're encoded, not where the decode. And so we've got 3 or 4 sources of law that are going to say that if you're encoding in a specific format, you're liable to the patent owners for some fee as yet undetermined. So I think if you look at codec adoption in 2024, I could be the only person who cares about this. Everybody I speak to is either unaware of it or doesn't think it's going to be significant. But I really think before I adopt a codec in 2003, back then you needed to be a codec expert to choose a new codec. Right. And even in 2013 or 2018 or 2019, you needed to be a codec expert. Now you need to be a legal expert, a chief financial officer, because you've got to evaluate all these pools and all these lawsuits, and it helps if you know a little bit about encoding.
Right, okay, interesting. So to the extent that we've mastered encoding as an industry, what we've not mastered is the financial implications of how we choose to encode and the potential legal ramifications of that.
Exactly, and it's particularly embarrassing for me. I think it was in 2023 I wrote a story that basically said, why are people so down on HEVC? Because if you're a publisher, you've never been charged content royalties. Why are you even worried about that? Right. And a lot of people contacted me around, on LinkedIn and via email and said, wait, we're getting calls. This is coming. And I had to rewrite and retract the article and write another one that said, hey, this is what's happening. Okay. And now it's here.
Wow. All right, well, Jan, as always, a very interesting conversation. Appreciate your time.
My pleasure.
And we'll be right back with our next interview.